Fighting games are a two-player genre. There's always a winner and a loser. People have been spending the entire length of the genre trying to figure out how to win, but very little of that time seems to be spent on how to lose. Winning and losing are two sides of the same coin and need to be treated as such in order to get a full view of the game. Do you excessively feel frustrated at losses? Or how about feeling stuck, not knowing how to move forward? Are you only enjoying the game when it's your character on the victory screen? You are missing out. Let me teach you what losing is all about, starting with frustration. To build an emotionally stable foundation that can adapt and enjoy the game in its entirety, you need the ability to accept unpleasant situations. Situations like getting DP'd out of your pressure, getting reverse edge guarded, getting your ass handed to you. To know when it's necessary to accept these situations in the first place, we need frustration. Frustration is a high-energy, negative emotion that I will define as a signal that expectations have not been met, that there is something that we struggle to accept. Acceptance is bliss, and frustration is the opposite of that. To be frustrated at loss means you expected to win, which is only natural. Having confidence in your play is important to all aspects of fighting games, but if you can only accept half of the outcomes in a game, you're playing a coin flip every time you play, which can interrupt your focus and erode your enjoyment of the game through the negativity bias. Negativity bias is the psychological principle that people react more strongly to negative situations than positive ones of the same intensity. It could take you 2 wins or more to make up for your 1 loss. Once a misguided player loses, they might want to make up for that loss and tilt off the side of the planet, which compounds a negative cycle of losing. People might try and end their play session on a strong note, reach a certain rank, or other arbitrary goals that bring forth an expectation of winning. Are you fucking serious? Are there any patterns in your thinking as you play and win or lose? A common mistake you should avoid is demonizing these feelings of frustration. Be mindful when applying any judgments towards yourself for feeling and being human, or your perspective on yourself will get worse and another nasty cycle based in ruminations will develop. Remember that emotions are information, and all information is good information. Mark Brackett, director of the Yale Center of Emotional Intelligence, writes in his book Permission to Feel that in order to achieve big goals, we have to use our emotions as though they were tools. Use your negativity bias to steer your focus towards the things that frustrate you, and use your frustration to steer your focus towards these expectations. But if frustration is based on expectations, should we focus on how expectations are built instead? Maybe we can attack this at the source. Schemas, rules that never work. Understanding different aspects of fighting games will make accepting them easier. If I know DPs are invincible and beat stagger pressure, I can readily accept that I need to tighten my block strings up. Different games offer different flavors of advantage and disadvantage. In Strive, characters have distinct and powerful pressure, where it might feel like they stick to you like glue. Rounds will be won or lost incredibly quickly, bringing a sense of clarity to when it's your turn and a sense of frustration when you're getting your ass handed to you. Meanwhile, Smash Bros. Generally has a much vaguer concept of each stage of play. The game's combination of strong retreating movement, minus frames, ledge mechanics, and percentages instead of a health bar means it's impossible to apply the same expectations you'd have for Strive to Smash, or vice versa. You attack with your movement first, and getting hit generally means less. It's a little harder to tell who's winning or losing in any particular moment. Things get trickier as you jump from game to game and you try to take what you've learned from one to the other. By getting more experience, we build the ideas of different rules that the fighting games we play seem to follow. These assumptions set the foundation for the habits we have. These assumptions, or schemas, make it easier to navigate the meta so I don't need to relearn how to play in every single match. Assumptions can follow us to where they no longer apply due to the reality of a different context, even if we're not aware of it. As a new player, your job is to build and adjust these assumptions when faced with new situations. Your experience with the bot in training mode will not match up with a real player, and 2 real players may play entirely differently. Even if your first exposure to a game was a massive learning experience, you'll need to be ready to let your frustration tell you when it's time to unlearn that experience once you get stuck. A more experienced player going into one game expecting to follow the same rules as another will also find it very hard to have fun. They might end up comparing apples to oranges without even realizing. Thoughts like, this isn't supposed to work like this. Why can't I even play the game? Or, why can't they get away with mashing like that? Arise when your expectations are challenged and you hold on to rules that do not exist. The late psychiatrist Dr. M. Scott Peck wrote in his book, The Road Less Traveled, that to know the world, we must not only examine it, but we must simultaneously examine the examiner. To lose is to be presented with challenges to your perception of the world and be forced to rewrite your schemas in order to settle frustration. If you're ready to rework your understanding, the pain of learning something new won't hit as hard. In time, you might even start seeking it, like exercising to look for that incredible soreness after a workout. Look at this Cloud player. Cloud is a swordy at the end of the day, using his movement to bait and punish me for whiffing with his massive reach. Lots of falling fadeaway aerials. With that in mind, I'll approach the matchup with... I'll make sure to... Aha! He has landed on my shield. Surely he will move... Hey, what the fuck? Why is he constantly RPSing with me? Doesn't he know that's not how you're supposed to play? Supposed to play? I'm frustrated because all this shit I thought I learned about Smash, everything I just said, is being proven wrong. King here doesn't care about retreating or frame disadvantage outside of setting up traps for me to fall into. If I'm gonna win, as far as I can tell, I need to throw these ideas of movement out the window and win the RPS more with my own buttons. Between these attacks, there's a space for me to up B and mash out a reversal. I can intercept his falling aerials with rising nair or fair. If I toss away my assumptions and play at his pace, I might have a shot at this. Remember that these assumptions aren't inherently bad. Building strong assumptions is a great way to get a flowchart going and to start on your fundamentals, your layer 1. This is where every player begins. But the point is to understand that these assumptions won't work everywhere. Be ready for a subversion of expectations at any point so that you don't stunt your growth for too long. Those subversions are a chance to use the remainder of the match to learn something new. Pick your wins and your losses. Throughout a match, both players will be challenging each other's understanding of the game. Maybe your opponent will present you with something you can't fight easily. If you take this as an indication of a skill gap, then the end result is already determined as far as you care. You're gonna lose. Regardless, there's almost never a point in the game where you can't do anything. So lay out your options carefully and play around. You know you're going to lose anyway, so it will not kill you any faster to try something new with the precious time you have left. And even if it does, do we really need to care? This is especially the case when someone is mashing the same individual move over and over. They're practically a training bot offering you the chance to practice. If you can beat their layer 1 and force them to try and adapt in order to beat you, that's reason enough to celebrate. You did it! Don't worry about the results screen. You learned something. Some players might not even stick around long enough for you to learn the counterplay, so hold on to that frustration. Crystallize it, let it form within you. Shitpost their character on Twitter, and bitch about them to your friends if you have any. Solidifying the frustration in your head can make the source of frustration clearer too. This will make your labbing and replay analysis more focused than someone who's just casually pressing buttons or watching their highlights. If you find out that you could squeak by against that player with a powerful flowchart of your own, mashing and not really learning anything, then that's cool. Good job, man. Here's a gold star. But be careful when that happens. Winning isn't always fun. Winning can be boring, even detrimental. An empty win could ignore a hole in your play that a loss centered on this weakness could fill. Empty wins are wins that are not challenging in some way and reinforce bad habits in the unaware player. Imagine when a weaker player gets steamrolled by whatever it is you do when your brain is turned off. This has a greater potential than the average game to develop those schemas about your character, the matchup, or the game that you'll have to spend more time breaking back down later. To make an empty win more fulfilling and useful, try to get into the head of your opponent with all that brain power you're saving. What could they be doing instead? And why aren't they doing it? What are the weaknesses of your game plan that aren't being exposed? Do they offer the chance to experiment with something you haven't tried before? This might be a good time to even start sandbagging, try new characters, or turn it into its own little game. This is a concept I brought up briefly in my motivation and inspiration video based on the competitive, expressive player. In order to be prepared to manipulate your meaning of a win, you should treat any match and your input with respect. By now, you should see that how you treat your play is more important than the result of the game. What thoughts go through your mind when you start the game up? Are they visions of grandeur, hopes of a solid performance, or muddy with the resistance of your opponents and your not yet warmed up hands? The mindset you take with you into the start of the game will leave its impact throughout. Plenty of little things can prep you into thinking you're about to jump into a simple single-player game that will hand you what you want on a silver platter, dampening your receptiveness to frustration and acceptance. Obfuscating objectivity. Here's a couple of things that keep coming up again and again when I'm pissed off and I'm not really sure why. Let's start with the media I consume that makes me want to play in the first place. Combo videos and character guides have a tendency to glorify the character they focus on. Some guides lean on best case scenarios or assume the player has knowledge or practice that you may not have. A combo video and or 3 hours in the lab trying to practice one fancy setup might have me itching to try it on a real player. I might tunnel vision and go for it over and over. Things can get lost in the translation into real play though. Sometimes VODs can do the same thing. It all looks so easy when you're lazily watching other people play on YouTube, but then the game harshly hits your hands with the reality of an execution barrier. You will never flub harder than on your first matches of the day. Media has the capacity to show us cool shit, but we can tunnel vision on recreating those things we see rather than being patient with ourselves and taking our time. Be critical when you try to apply things you've seen to reality. This resistance is to be expected, especially after you've been away from it for a while or you're just getting started. Someone that's distracted from their play struggles more than average to get to grips with the state of the game. This can mean serious mental issues like anxiety disorders, depression, or other diagnosable problems. Or this can be more contextualized, simple issues. I'm worried about this test that's coming up. I'm worried about this job interview. Speaking from personal experience, my problems are getting caught with ruminations. Ruminations severely dampen my ability to immerse myself in the situation I'm in. Ruminations are negatively biased cycles of thinking, usually focused on trying to solve some perceived internal problem. It's some kind of vortex of doubt, fear, and misplaced pride in my own self-assessment and critical thinking skills. I'm a psych major. I can fix me. I see the problems that all sorts of other people have that are just like me, and if I can just do this thing, and this thing, and this thing, if I can just change how my friends interact with me, if I can just change who I'm with, if I can change my diet, what if I work out more? What if I go out and absorb some sunlight 30 minutes a day before I go outside and do my job? Things before. I'm so smart. Why can't I do it? What if? I can do this, I can do this, I can do this. I fixed things before. I'm so smart. Why can't I do it?
Problem is, there's too much in here.
Sometimes, even if I do recognize that I'm ruminating, I can get anxious and feel entitled to relax in order to retaliate from this pain. This can mean retreating into a game that demands precise introspections and acceptance. Neither of these things are readily available to me in this headspace. There's so much pent-up frustration towards myself and the world that signals from the game can blur together with these things, and the focus that frustration is meant to offer me gets foggy. It becomes much of a struggle to do anything at all. But I'm not done overstepping my boundaries as a content creator yet. No. Here are some strategies that me, friends, and my therapist have found to get around ruminations, including putting my thoughts to paper or sharing them with someone so that they stick and feel more real. Seeing my thoughts reflected back at me makes their qualities clearer to me. I can cut through what is bullshit and find the things that are genuinely helpful. Using my mind's eye to visualize my thoughts rather than verbally thinking, since it's harder to be cruel to an imagined visual of myself rather than it is to spew words out that I will still pick up on the tones of. It's harder to be cruel to a visualized image of myself than it is to pick up cruelty from the words that I use to think about the situations I'm in. Visuals are also just more efficient than words in conveying meaning in the same way that writing them down or sharing them with someone else can be. Meditating develops the acceptance muscles that you need to walk away from ruminations by training you to allow your thoughts to pass. You can sit down eventually. You're going to be able to sit down and say, I feel this thing. And that's okay. Hold on, let's backtrack a bit. Seeing my thoughts reflected back at me makes their qualities clear to me. You guys know what the point of a video essay is? The idea here is to make sure your head is in the game. Internal and external influences can pull you out of reality with allusions to success, to failure, to obligations, to have a good time. Pay close attention to thoughts that might diminish the reality of your input and the other player's experience. This is a two-player genre, which means the other player has their own input. Are you capable of recognizing their interests, or are they only an obstacle to overcome, like some monster of the week? Humanizing your opponent can open up the social aspect of the game, leading to a stronger sense of appreciation and camaraderie. But more relevantly, it reminds you that the other person has a flowchart, flaws, and habits to take note of. They're looking for something to take advantage of in the same way that you are. All this talk of schemas, frustration, and hopes is a two-way street. Both players in a match have an idea of how the game should be played, and the clash between these two philosophies is what makes the genre so beautiful. Underneath any interaction is an assumption players make towards you, the matchup, and the game. The steps they make can reveal information of how they want to win. The most important assumptions you will make will usually be based on what will win or lose you the match, however you've decided to define it. They're also the hardest assumptions to get rid of. Recognizing and tossing aside your assumptions in the face of their failure efficiently is the hallmark of strong adaptability. Freeing yourself from your expectations and playing the way you're supposed to opens up a wider world of possibilities and unlocks the ability to appreciate anything the game offers you. It also opens up the sense of creativity and flow that someone boxed in by the sense of winning or losing just won't get. The other player has some really cool ideas too, I guarantee it. There's strategies in other people's heads that you would never think of. These interactions offer a chance to learn what those things could be. Recognizing the other player as human and fallible can be especially difficult to do in online matches though, where the only communication possible is through the game itself. It can feel like you're fighting a computer, flooded with the certainty of being part of the code itself. I know that frustration, I'm sure you have it too. If this is something you struggle with, so you can go to locals, get your friends together to play, or look for Discords or other sites where people will voice chat with you online. Humanize the other player, recognize them, and you'll have a better time. Acceptance and growth are partners. The competitor needs to accept losses in order to efficiently learn from them, since that acceptance is the key that unlocks the path for quick growth. That growth lets you push past things that you don't actually need to accept. These things go from a roadblock that you need to conquer to just a step on the path to growth. If you stay passive after accepting these rocks, these blocks, these short-term outcomes, then you will rationalize your losses long-term as part of how the world works. That character's just better than mine. I can't do anything about this move. They should just ban Steve already. Are ways this shows them FGC, meaningless quips that have been turned into a running gag. This shows in a momentary sense, through missing in-game opportunities. An accepting passive player might accept that a move or a tactic seems unpunishable and holds back from mashing out, which an aggressive player will use as the chance to pressure in more risky ways. This player will walk themselves into the corner and get the shit kicked out of them by the other player, holding block and taking the throw over and over. This is one of my biggest weaknesses when I'm autopiloting in Smash. When I notice that I'm camping too hard, I might decide to start challenging more, or throw out raw attacks just to shake up the pace of the match. I might really want to get to this random run-up B or Bear 1 setup, because it'll be funny, and it makes approaching me threatening. This creates space for my projectiles and traps to do their thing. This creates a very all-or-nothing foundation to my neutral game as Link that demands specific kinds of engagement where I can use my movement to make a more nuanced response. At the end of the day, I do want to try and win. If I never take that time to grow beyond my camping and start pressing buttons when I find that I'm getting stuck, I'm leaving the potential for exploration and interactivity on the table. In short, Too much acceptance without actively engaging with the world through your wants could blind you to different experiences. Turn the fighting game into an adventure, a journey to grow. This can help you navigate the nuances between pushing forwards and accepting obstacles that you can't overcome. Pay attention to the next time you call something bullshit. Look at the next time you're frustrated. Look at when you're content and happy. What parts of the world is your heart trying to get you to pay attention to in these moments? Chances to appreciate, to grow, to build, to love. Think about when you hate the game, the world, or yourself. More important than whatever's causing what you're feeling, think about whether you recognize these feelings as acceptable, as a part of who you are, as information for this moment. Thoughts like, I shouldn't feel this way, there's something wrong here, are the first steps of someone trying to improve their mental fitness. But should is the most vile word in the English language when it comes to this stuff. There's nothing wrong with how you're feeling right now. Give yourself permission to feel. Be sad, be angry, be happy. It's all information that is valuable to the situation you're in. What's important is your capacity to recognize your emotions, their sources, and understanding how to wander through the path they lay out for you to find the beauty and freedom that you're looking for. This was a short introduction to the emotion of frustration and the art of losing. Thank you so much for watching. I hope you have a wonderful day.